honestly, it is more than a couple of years ago. I was in high school. I was 17 years old, and my brother came to me. It was the school holidays, December holidays, and he said, "Hey, Wes, do you want to come with my friends and I, and we're going to go on a mountain bike tour, and we're going to go and cycle for about 4 days through the mountains in South Africa, and you do about 80 kilometers during those 4 days." And I had a bicycle, and I thought, man, this sounds like an adventure. This sounds exciting. This sounds pretty cool. I had not been into cycling anything like my brother and his friends. And so, but I thought, hey, this is going to be a cool adventure. This will be fun. And we went to a place called Whip. It's in sort of the northern part of South Africa, where it's really beautiful, lots of mountains, lots of forestries there. And this is pretty much how I looked, all right? So, yeah, this was the 90s. As you can see, I was in my, I don't know if those are sandals or jandals or bad Crocs, I don't know, but that's what I wore. I didn't even have cycling pants. Those were board shorts that I was wearing for this 80-kilometer journey. And yeah, I don't know, with the cap backwards and those bad sunglasses. But yeah, this was me ready for this exciting adventure. And this were some of the guys that I was riding with. These were two of my brother's friends, and then it was himself. And these guys were honestly like pros. They had all these bags on the side of their bicycle, where I had a backpack and I had my sleeping bag in this plastic bag. So yeah, it was actually, this beginning of it was really good. I was loving it. And the first day we cycled, and it was just beautiful scenery. I loved hanging out with them. The legs were pretty good. They were fresh. I can remember just arriving at our hut that first night and just chilling and chatting with the guys and just having a good day. And we even made a fire, and we had marshmallows. We had toasting marshmallows under the beautiful African sky. And this was just an exciting trip, right? And the next day, we got on our bikes again, and we started cycling again. And before we knew it, we came across this massive big waterfall. And there were only 2 hours left for that day for cycling until we got to the hut. And we thought, man, we've done such a good job. We've cycled so fast. And everything was just going really good. And we decided, hey, let's have lunch here at this waterfall. So we had lunch. Can remember sharing some biltong between us. It was just a perfect day, and we had a swim there at the waterfall. But then all of a sudden, the weather started to change. And here's a photo, and these were all taken on a Fiji film, you know. These are back in the 90s, all right? But that's my brother over there. The weather started to change, and the fog and the mist hit us. And we decided, hey, we got to get going. And we started cycling. We came around the corner, and we just really didn't know which way to go anymore. And to make matters worse, it started to rain. And then it didn't just start to rain, it started to pour. And then it didn't just start to pour, and I'm not exaggerating, it started to hail. And we were stuck on top of this mountain, not knowing which direction the hut was. We had a map, we were trying to navigate through the fog and the mist, and we were totally lost. But then, to make matters even worse, it was a thunder and a lightning storm, all right, on top of the mountain, and all of us are just drenched. It's thunder like you can't believe the sound, lightning striking close to us. I can remember this vivid picture of me standing under a tree, just shaking and shivering and thinking, why in the world did I come on this trip? And seeing my brother and his two friends at the other trees, and we were just lost. It didn't stop raining. It was just one of those days that it just kept raining and raining and raining. And eventually we just dumped our bikes and we tried to navigate and figure out where this hut was. Not exaggerating, but hours later in the evening, that was only supposed to be 2 hours cycle away from the waterfall where we got lost. We got there late in the night, and we were miserable. We were like, there was no, hey, good vibes in the hut tonight. There was no toasting marshmallows. Everything was soaking. Our sleeping bags were soaking. Our food was. And we didn't even know where we left our bikes. So the next morning, when we went to search for our bikes, it took us hours to actually try and figure out where our bikes was. And this is a photo of eventually discovering our bikes somewhere in the forest. So yeah, that was a story that where, it started off in the beginning like so epic. It was so good. Everything was going great. I was loving this adventure. I thought this was the best thing ever, to this point where I was regretting every moment. And you can just imagine the attitude that we had this morning and the conversations that we were having this morning, where we were stuck in this middle. I think this was just day 2, and we were like, man, we were already done with this whole cycling trip after that day. But I know that everyone seated here today can relate with a story like this. And maybe not in this physical sense, but in a way that you've been in the middle. You've been stuck. Everything's been going well. It started off so good. Things were awesome. And then all of a sudden, a storm came along. Something shifted in your life. And you find yourself just screaming, just pulling your hair out, thinking, hey, how did I get here? Why am I here? And we all face this, whether you're a Jesus follower or not. We name it different things in our life, but we all get stuck in this middle. And this is such an essential place in our lives, because this is a place where I really and strongly believe that God operates at his utmost best, where he really comes and tries to meet our needs and to show us and reveal himself to us. So as we start this series on the middle, today I'm going to share a story with you just to start the series off. And we're going to continue throughout the 5 weeks all about the middle and trying to figure out where God is in our middles. But the story I want to share is about Jesus and his disciples. And just before we get to this story, I want to give you a bit of a context of what was actually happening before the time. Jesus had just sent out his disciples, the guys who were following him, and they were going into the community, helping people, healing people, meeting their needs, and he calls them all back. And when they're all back, the crowds just keep following him. They keep hearing about who Jesus is and what he's been doing in people's lives. And he tries to get away, and he actually says to his disciples, hey, let's go over to the other side. And they try and go over to the other side. And when they arrive at the other side, the whole crowd actually got there before them. All right. And then he says to his disciples, he says, hey, guys, I want you to feed all these people. And Mark records it, and he shares that there were about 5,000 men, plus women and children there. And the disciples are like, how in the world are we going to do this? And one of the disciples comes to Jesus and says, hey, we got a young boy who's got 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And Jesus says, okay, start handing that out, start dishing that out. And he does an incredible miracle where all these men actually get fed from these 5 loaves and 2 fishes, even so that there's actually bread left over. And straight after that, while Jesus is still busy sort of collecting all the bread, we pick up this story in Mark chapter 6, and this is what happens here. All right, he says, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. So straight after this miracle, all right, here's Jesus, and he gets his disciples and he says to them, hey guys, I want you to get in the boat, all right? I want you to get in the boat, and I want you guys, actually I'll put it this side, I want you to get in the boat, and I want you to go to Bethsaida, just on the other side. And I'm going to wait here, and I'll meet you guys there. And the disciples get in the boat. Hope this is going to hold me. And they start rowing. Now, I want you to visualize this, because I want you to picture and think about what the disciples were saying to each other while they were in the boat in the beginning. Because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, man, Jesus immediately sends them out once they've just discovered, all right, once they've just witnessed Jesus do insane miracle by feeding 5,000 people. You know, those disciples in the boat there, they would have been saying, man, we'll get in the boat, Jesus. Obviously, we'll get in the boat. Can you imagine the conversations? I think they would have been saying, man, that was amazing what Jesus just did there. Imagine what he's going to do as we journey over to the other side. I mean, all of them would have been saying, man, this guy is the real deal. And it's easy to follow Jesus, right? When you've just witnessed a miracle, when you've just seen him do something supernatural. For me, I think of this and I think like this is how a lot of our lives and different seasons in our lives begin. Like we get to the beginning, maybe it's a marriage, and when we're in that marriage or when it's our wedding ceremony, I mean, everything is just going right. We share our vows, we share our commitment, and we're just so excited about this new chapter in our life. Maybe it's a business that we get started and we got so much expectation, so much excitement for this business and what's going to happen as we get in the boat and we see, hey, and we're so expectant of what's going to happen. Maybe it's just, our friendships, maybe whatever that thing is that at the beginning, I mean, it just looks so good and everything is just going well. The conversations between the disciples, I'm sure they were just whistling while they were just rowing, right? Just across the lake. But then the story changes a bit. Jesus sends them out and then Jesus stays behind. And this is what Jesus does then. It says, after leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. And I like that. It gives us just a glimpse of, hey, even though Jesus had just fed 5,000, even though Jesus was the Son of God, serving people all the time, he decides to send his disciples away so that he can just take some time out, just have some solitude time and just actually speak to his Father. He does that, and through the night, this is what happens then. He says, later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. So the disciples have obviously gone in the boat, and guess what they've done? They've rowed all the way to where? The middle, all right? And they get to the middle, and guess where Jesus is? Jesus is still on the shore, right? Jesus is still here, standing on the shore, looking at the disciples. It's late at night. And then this is what happens, where everything all of a sudden starts to turn. He says he saw the disciples doing what? Straining, all right? Straining at the oars because the wind was against them. In other words, he looks from the shore and he sees the disciples. He sees the guys who are closest to him. The guys he sent out straining. In other words, struggling in the middle. In the boat, straining. And the reason why they're straining is why? The wind has come up, all right? A storm has hit. These guys are straining. They're really straining. The journey that started over there with so much excitement and enthusiasm, now in the middle, I think starts to shift and change a bit. Because I think now the conversations aren't anymore, oh, how exciting is it to follow Jesus, right? But now it's more like, why the hell did he send us here? These waves are getting bigger and bigger. We're in our middle. We're struggling. Where is God? Like Jesus is still on the shore. Yeah, they're in their middle. And we can all relate with this because all of us have been in the middle. All of us have been in the middle where we're straining at the oars. We're just not sure how we're going to get through this. How are we going to get through this program, this recovery? How are we going to get through this relationship? This is so hurtful. How am I going to turn up at work again with everything that has happened and what I've been going through? Man, I've been trying to follow Jesus all this time, but I keep getting stuck here in the middle. And then Mark records this, and he says, shortly before dawn, he went out to them walking on the lake. All right, now this is where it just shifts. And if you don't believe in the Bible, this is just probably now where I'm going to lose you. But hang on, just stay with us, all right? Because this is where something supernatural happens. And I love this because shortly before dawn, other translations actually render this as maybe 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning. And I thought about this and I don't know if you've been in the middle, but man, isn't it like at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. when you just awake and that it's just in your mind all the time? You're trying to sleep and you can't because you got so much fear, you got so much anxiety. And you're just thinking, man, why am I here? How do I get out of this? You're just running through that whole thing that you're trying to get out of all the time. It's at this time that Jesus shows up on the scene in the middle when the disciples are in the middle, and he goes out to them, all right? And he does something supernatural. He walks on the lake, all right? He walks on the lake. The disciples are in the boat, all right? They're in their middle, struggling, straining at the oars, all right? Imagine this. The winds come up. The waves are crashing. They're really fearful. And here comes Jesus walking on the water. Crazy. This is what Mark then says. He says this. He was about to pass by them, all right? Not only is he walking on water and the disciples are struggling, now Jesus comes past and he's passing them by, all right? He's not even stopping. He's passing them by. Like, none of us like to hear this because we always think that, hey, if I just call out to Jesus, he's always going to be there. But Jesus' intention here is actually to pass them by. And what's interesting, if we go back to the beginning of a year, this is where Jesus said to them and gave them the challenge and said, hey guys, you go ahead of me to Bethsaida and I'll meet you guys there. He already gave them the same Jesus that fed the 5,000. The same Jesus now is walking on water, says, hey, I'll meet you on the other side. Just trust me. Trust me. Don't get lost in your middle. Yeah, Jesus walks past by them, and then he does take a turn. He says, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. All right? They thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Not only are they struggling to get out of this middle, but now they see Jesus, all right, come walking past them. When they see him, they don't see the same Jesus who just sent them. They see a ghost. Instead of seeing someone who is their friend, they see something that looks like a fear to them, all right? And they're terrified. They're terrified of this middle. They're terrified of Jesus, the one who could actually save them. And I love this because it's at this moment that things shift. Jesus speaks to them and he says this immediately. And I love the word immediately. Mark just used it right in the beginning. He said immediately after he fed 5,000, he sent the disciples on the lake. And now again, he says immediately when he sees them in their fear, when he sees them anxious, when their view is distorted, when their perspective is distorted of who God is, when their picture of God is distorted, he sees them and immediately he speaks these three things. And he says, hey, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. If there's anything I can encourage you with today, is that when you're in your middle, when you're straining by the oars, when you're struggling to see the other side, when you think, hey, God has led me all the way, why has he given up on me now in the middle? The first thing that I can encourage you with is to take courage. I've been in the middle, and I can remember someone every single day when he saw me, he'd say to me, hey, take courage, take courage, take courage, take courage. And I love this language that he uses here, because when he says take courage, it's an option. It shows us it's an option. It's actually something we can do or we don't have to do. Jesus speaks to the disciples here in their fear, in their storm, in their middle, and he says to them, hey, take courage. Choose to grab onto courage, to grab onto hope. Take courage. And then he shows them how by revealing, and he says to them, hey, it is I. It is I. I love that Jesus, when the disciples are in the boat, he doesn't say to them, hey guys, it is you. It is you. Hey? But that's what happens in our middle, because we always try to figure out our middle by ourselves. How many sleepless nights have we tried to figure out our middle by ourselves? When we're straining by the oars and we're just trying to figure out, hey, what do I need to do? What can I change? What must I do? What must I do? Where Jesus shows up and he says, take courage, it is I. I want to remind you who Jesus is. He's the Savior. He's the Messiah. He's the guy who actually sent them to go this way. He's the guy who says, hey, I am the beginning and the end. I'll be there with you. I'm a rescuer. I'm a safe place. And then he says to them this last phrase where he says, don't be afraid. And I mean, that's easy to say, right? Don't be afraid. You tell me that in my middle. I mean, I can't grasp that. If I'm in my middle and someone says, don't be afraid, I'm stressing. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. But the way Jesus says this, and this is how he says it, he says, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid, and then he does something after he speaks. And this is what he does. Then he climbed into the boat with them. He climbs into the boat. He climbs into the middle with them. He's in the boat now. He says, hey, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. And the reason is because I'm climbing in the boat with you. That relationship, that stressful business decision, the people that you can't navigate life with. He says, hey, I'm with you in that middle. I'm with you in that middle. And then he says, if we go one back. He says, and the wind died down straight away. He gets in the middle and the wind dies down. And I love that picture because it shows us that, hey, when we're in the boat, when Jesus gets in the boat with us, there's a peace that comes upon us that we've been trying to grab all the time, probably through our own strength, through our own ways. But now, hey, there's a peace that actually comes when God jumps into the boat with us. And it says they were completely amazed. Completely amazed. Why wouldn't you be, right? And then he says, for they had not understood about the loaves, their hearts were hardened. And I love this. Mark, what he's sharing with us here, he's sharing about this middle. He's sharing about the story of them in the boat, Jesus stepping in, the wind dying out. But then he brings us back to the beginning. He brings us back to the loaves. And he says the disciples didn't even comprehend what had actually just happened here. They didn't comprehend that Jesus had actually done something supernatural here, and that he was the God who actually said, hey, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to meet you on the other side. And he says, hey, the thing that happened, which happens to us, is their hearts were hardened. They were hardened. In other words, when they were in the middle here, they weren't trusting in Jesus anymore. No, their faith was wavering. Like many of our faith or our circumstances waver when we're in the middle. It's so easy for us to throw in the towel. It's so easy for us to give up when we're in the middle. Their hearts were hardened. And I love this thought of this option that we have between faith and fear in the middle. Most of the time, we're very pro at actually choosing fear. And I think one of the things that I've seen is that the middle is like a change factory, all right? Our middle is a change factory where actually the enemy knows, hey, this is the time where I can capitalize on humanity. I mean, he's not concerned about our beginning. It's okay. He's like, hey, follow Jesus, do whatever you want. Hey, join a life group, get baptized. Hey, give your finances to the church to make a difference. Hey, care about people. Hey, love everybody. The enemy doesn't care about what happens here, but he's really keen about what happens here. because he knows if he can just get you here in the middle, in the storm, where now that you've been following Jesus, hey, things get tough, and he's trying to distort your picture of who Jesus is, then he knows you're going to choose the enemy. And this is a pivotal moment where I like the terminology of like a change factory, where we can choose, hey, are we going to actually choose our fears and believe the enemy, or are we actually going to choose faith and trust Jesus who steps into the boat with us? And what happens in this pivotal time, Charlotte Gamble actually sums it up like this. She says, it is in the middle of the storm that we discover what is in the middle of us. It is in the middle of the storm that we discover what is in the middle of us. When we're in this boat and the storm is actually brewing and we're struggling, we start to discover, hey, what's going on in our heart? What's really going on in our heart? Who we really are. And this is the climax. This is the pivotal point where Jesus wants to come and step into your middle, because this is where change happens. I hope that as we journey through this whole series on the middle, that we will discover what our middle is, and that we'll invite Jesus to come and soften our hearts. Because that's all that it is. The middle's so chaotic and crazy is because we've just hardened our hearts to him. So here's a few action steps that I want to encourage us to do as we embark on this journey of the middle together. The first one is, I want us to identify the middle that you are currently in. Today, as I've spoken, some of you already know, you have a clear picture of what that middle is. You know what that season is. You know what you're wrestling with. Some of you might have already forgotten about what that middle is because your heart is so hard. But I want to encourage you to actually identify it, all right? And then I want you to actually write it down. And one of the things that we've actually done for the series is we've put those 2 chicken mesh prayer walls up in the foyer. And I want to encourage you to actually go after this program and go and write down your middle. If you know what it is today, go and write it down. If you don't know what it is today, go home, write it down. Identify what is the middle. What is the middle where the enemy is trying to come in and actually take control of your life? Write it down. And we're going to put it up in those chicken mesh wire holes. And then we're just going to pray for them. And we're not going to read it. We're not going to open them at all. But we're just going to pray for your middle for the rest of August. And we're going to see, hey, what can God actually do? Can he really step into the boat during this season? And then the second action step I want us to do is I want us to commit to continue paddling. The thing about the story that we shared today is that the disciples, they didn't abandon the boat. They didn't jump off the boat. They stayed in the boat, even though they were straining at the oars. Even though they were terrified when they saw Jesus walking on water, but they stayed in the boat. Some of us have jumped off the boat too early. Some of us have given up because it's just gotten so hard and we haven't seen an outcome yet. But my encouragement is through this season, hey, let's commit to continue paddling. Just stay in the boat. Let's identify what that middle is. We're going to pray about it. Let's get to continue to paddle and not give up. And then the last thing I want us to do is I want us to pray for perspective in the middle. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I'm in the middle, I just can't see clearly. There's a big fog, there's a big mist. Jesus is distorted, he's looking like a ghost to me. And I want us to actually pray for perspective in the middle. Like, God, you know what is going on in each of our lives. Give us clarity. Give us eyes to see you walking on water. The one thing I love about this story is that the disciples would have never experienced a Jesus walking miracle God if they were on the shore, right? It was only because they were in the middle It was only because they were going through this season, this difficult, stormy season, that they were able to actually see God in all his fullness and in all his power. And I believe that that's where God wants to actually come and meet you. Because some of our middles are the best place where God can do a miracle. So can we do that? Those three things, all right? After this program today, I'm going to encourage you. Identify the middle you are currently in. If you can't do that today, if you're not exactly sure, go and maybe chat to a friend about it. Maybe go home and through this week journal about it. Write it down and write it down. I encourage you to write it down. Make a point of writing it down. And then, hey, commit. Make a commitment. Not a half pie. Like, make a commitment. Hey, this is my middle. I'm not going to abandon the ship. I'm going to keep paddling even though it's tough during this season. And then, hey, God, give me clarity. We're going to pray for perspective during this middle. God, today, as we sit in church and as we listen to these words, God, you know that all of us face some middles in our life. Some middles that are really tough, God. Some that don't even have answers, and somewhere where we actually can't even see you and see you actually trying to come and encourage us and try to actually get in our boat and help us. And God, so where those seasons are today, I want to pray that during this month of August, we can see you in new ways. We can see you as a Jesus who walks on water in our lives. We can see you as a God who does so much more for us. So God, I pray that, as each person writes down their middle, identifies it, and we start praying about it, and we make a commitment that we're not going to give up, I pray that you will join us in the boat. I pray that you will join us in that season, God, and that we will just trust in you with everything that we have. Is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.